Okay, so we have reviewed two of the best 18-inch gaming laptops on the market at the moment, the Alienware 18 and the Razer Blade 18. Having them both in the studio, we thought, let's put them head to head. So before we actually start, I want to just quickly mention the specs that we've got for both of these, and they are very similar. Both laptops have the Core Ultra 275HX CPU and the RTX 5080 GPU, so that's going to be handy when we do put them head to head. They've both got 32GB of RAM, but the actual Alienware has the 6400 faster RAM, whereas we've got 5600 on the Alienware. We get a 1TB Gen 4 drive in the Razer Blade and a 2TB Gen 5 drive in the Alienware. So straight away with specs, you've got to start handing it over to that Alienware because they have gone all out with the specs this year, whereas Razer have been a little bit more conservative, using some slightly slower tech here. When considering the price of these laptops, that's a bit of a miss from Razer. Now, in the UK, where I've bought both of these laptops, the prices are actually very similar. This Razer Blade 18 cost me £3,599, and the Alienware 18 with slightly better specs cost £3,699. But as usual with Alienware, you're more likely to get a discount code. Right, so let's take a look around both these laptops before we look at the performance. So this year, Razer have actually increased the size of the Razer Blade 18, and Alienware have created a whole new Area-51 line of laptops for their series of 16 and 18-inch laptops. But when we put these both side to side now, although I thought the Alienware was going to be massive compared to the Razer Blade, it's actually not too bad, because this is much chunkier this year. Now when we put them front to front, you can see that the Razer Blade is very slightly taller than the front of the Alienware. It comes in at more of a clamshell. And we've also got more curved angles on the Alienware, or very sharp angles on the Razer Blade. Now from ergonomics and carrying these laptops around, this Alienware is a lot more comfortable to pick up and move around than the Razer Blade. With regards to company branding, you obviously get the lit Razer logo on the Razer Blade and the alien head on the actual Alienware. But you do get a lot more lighting with the Alienware because we get this beautiful subtle lighting zone on the back, and both of them have lighting underneath. So we get the glass panel on the Alienware 18 with some lights coming through the actual fans themselves. And on the Razer Blade, we get a smaller window, but with much better lighting. So with regards to external lighting, I think the win here has to go to the Alienware. Although the lighting is better underneath, you never see it. This subtle strip they put down here is just so much nicer on the Alienware this year. Now let's quickly whiz them round and look at the size from the rear to see the highest points. And you can see, again, very, very similar. The Alienware is convex, so it is slightly higher along this sort of hinge area, but even then, you're probably talking maybe 3mm higher than the Razer Blade. It's pretty insignificant. So despite the actual Razer looking a lot smaller on paper, the Alienware actually is pretty compact this year. Now, obviously, depth is going to be an area where the Razer Blade is going to be a lot thinner because you have that rear grille on the Alienware. So if I put them front, here we go, look, you can see that this whole rear grille section sits behind the back end of the actual Razer Blade. But considering the actual extra airflow and heat sinks that are provided by that, I think it's certainly a worthwhile feature. It just makes putting them in a bag slightly more difficult. You need a dedicated bag for the Alienware 18, and Dell do make one, whereas the Razer Blade 18 I've managed to fit in a lot of 17-inch backpacks. Now materials-wise, build quality on both of these is excellent. We get the usual milled aluminium chassis with the Razer Blade. It is an absolute fingerprint magnet as always, and the matte black as standard. Whereas this year, Alienware have gone with this liquid teal, beautiful colour on these Alienware 18s. And I have to be honest, I think it looks absolutely stunning. They're both fingerprint magnets, always got one of these handy. But again, it's not milled aluminium, but it is obviously sort of metal throughout with different aluminiums and magnesiums on the internal chassis. And they both feel equally well built. Now, when it comes to ports, this is completely different between these two laptops. Razer always go for the approach where all the ports are on the side. So if we just quickly look here, on the right side, we've got a full-size SD card slot, Thunderbolt 5, USB-A, HDMI 2.1, and a Kensington lock. And the left side, we have the power jack, an RJ45, two USB-As, another Thunderbolt 5, and the headset jack. So a good range of ports, but all are on the side. Now the Alienware, on the left side, we have the headset jack and a full-size memory card, and then all the other ports are on the rear. So on the rear of the laptop, we've got power jack, HDMI 2.1, two Thunderbolt 5s, three USB-As, and an RJ45. So port quantity are identical pretty much, but the location is very different. So the Alienware will look neater on your desk with the cables coming out behind it, but it is more difficult plugging things in when they're actually behind the laptop. I wish they had just put one USB-A or USB-C on the side of the laptop. The Razer Blade is much easier when you're plugging things in and out of the laptop, but it does look a mess, and everything that you plug on this side, if you're right-handed, will probably get in the way of your mouse hand. But fortunately, I try and plug everything onto this left side, so my RJ45, any sort of mice and keyboards, everything I try and plug on this side to try and keep the right side free. So again, it's user preference. I don't dislike either approaches. I just wish we had one commonly used USB-C or USB-A on the side of this one, but it does look much neater, especially if it's desktop replacements. Right, now the one thing I do want to talk about is weight, because both of these are heavy laptops, but let's just see how heavy. Let's start off with the chunky boy, the Alienware 18. So that's 4.17 kilogram. That is really quite chunky. Now let's do the Razer Blade 18, 3.1 kilograms. So we're talking an entire kilogram heavier for that Alienware 18. Now, you might be saying to yourself, does it really matter? These are both pretty much non-portable laptops anyway, but this does feel really easy to handle, whereas this one is quite an effort to pick up and move around. You want to pick it up, put it in a bag, and then bring out the bag the other end. This one I could quite easily just pick it up and just carry it around with one hand still. So probably not that big of an issue with 18-inch laptops, but that is something you do need to actually know about. Big weight difference. So now we've looked around laptops, let's open them up and take a look at the actual palm rests and the other features on the inside of the actual laptop itself. Okay, we're open. Both of these laptops have a keyboard with a number pad. With the actual keys lighting, they're both backlit per key. I've got them both set pretty much to rainbow waves. They look very similar. I love typing on both these keyboards, but I have to give the edge to the typing quality on the Alienware keyboards. Now I've got the dome keys and I find that absolutely fantastic. It's probably my best gaming laptop keyboard. But they also offer a Cherry MX red switch mechanical keyboard. I also love that version, but I can't get that with the UK keyboard layout. The Razer Blade is just a standard dome key. We've got more travel this year than usual Razer Blades. It does feel better than previous Razer Blades, but it's still not quite the same typing experience as an Alienware keyboard. So that's something to consider if typing is an absolute priority. Now the trackpads, if I just put them side by side here, they've both got large trackpads, but the Razer Blade 18 takes it to another level. Now this is actually shrunk down from last year's trackpad on the Razer Blade 18, but look at the difference in size. And I have to be honest, I actually prefer the size on the Alienware 18. This one, as amazing as it is too big. And who'd have thought I'd be saying that? The trackpad is too big and you often will be catching your palm on there. Palm rejection is good, but you will still get the odd error because you've caught the touchpad. I also love the fact that that Alienware gets a light up touchpad. Again, this is personal preference. Some people hate RGB, but I think that looks stunning. I have, again, with the rainbow wave on there, you can have it solid colors and do what you like within the Alienware command center, but that does look good to me. Now, either side of the keyboards are the speaker grills. Now, the Alienware has a 4-speaker system and the Razer Blade has a 6-speaker system, so let's hear what they sound like. So, speaker test of the Alienware 18 versus the Razer Blade 18, starting at 50% volume, and the Alienware's going first. %. And finally, 100%. Well, we can easily say that the Alienware 18 is an awful lot louder. But with that said, I much prefer the speakers on the Razer Blade 18. They're fuller sounding with a little bit more bass, much less coarse, and just good audio quality. So not as loud, but they do sound good. Then the only real difference when we're looking on the top of this laptop is the actual Alienware has intake grills right along this top here, whereas the Razer Blade has nothing. All of the intake is from the bottom, but we do get more intake on the bottom of this one than we do on the Alienware. So as we move up to the screens, and this is very different between these two laptops as well, they are both IPS, and the biggest gripe I've had from the previous reviews and unboxings is the fact that these are IPS screens. I personally don't have a problem with that. I know most people would have liked to see mini LED on these 18-inch expensive laptops, but there is no OLED panels that you could even put in here, because a lot of people are saying they want OLED. There aren't any in 18-inch at the moment, but they could have used mini LED. Instead, we have IPS, and the Alienware has a 2560 by 1600, 300 Hz, 500 nit display. It's been fantastic in my extensive gaming that I've done on this laptop. Now, the Razer Blade 18 has gone for a very different approach this year. They've gone for a higher resolution, 3840 by 2400, 240 Hz display that's just over 500 nits. So it's actually very slightly brighter than the Alienware. So this is great if you're more of a content creator or someone that's going to be working on the screen as well as gaming. It's going to be harder to drive games at 2400p. But this has an extra weapon in its arsenal. It's dual switching. If you go into the sign up software and then go to the display tab, you can then click a button and switch it to 1200p, 440 Hz. Now it does need a reboot, but then you're getting native 1920 by 1200, 440 Hz. So if you're running esports titles that you want a really high frame rates, or you're running AAA titles that you can't run at that 2400p, you can switch it to 1200 and have an amazing gaming experience. Now, I thought this was going to be a gimmick, and I thought having to reboot to change the resolutions between the native 4K Plus and the 1200p would be too much hassle. But having used this now for a couple of weeks and gaming on it, I'm absolutely loving this feature. Now, I'm usually finding myself working during the day at the 4K Plus for my content creation work, video editing, photo editing, stunning on that display. And then at the end of the day, when I want a game, I'll turn it to that 1200p and have high frame rates and everything. But I'm quite a sort of Twitch sort of shooter that I enjoy most. It's been a really good feature, much better than I was expecting. So that's something to consider when looking at these two. I think the 1600p, if you're purely gaming and not doing any work, this is the better gaming resolution on an 18-inch laptop. But if you're looking for a laptop for work and play, this is a great way to do it. Now, as we look above the screens, we get a 5 megapixel camera on the Razer Blade 18 and a 4K camera on the Alienware 18. Let's see what they look like. So this is the new upgraded 4K camera on the Alienware 18 Area-51. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this new webcam. Do you reckon it looks a lot better? It is 4K now apparently. Let me know what you think. This is a test of the webcam on the Razer Blade 18 2025 edition. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think this looks and sounds like. Hopefully this is a bit of an upgrade, but webcams on laptops are usually pretty rubbish. And both of these laptops have Windows Hello facial recognition, which I absolutely love for those speedy logins. And the Razer Blade 18 this year has a camera shutter, so you can actually disable the camera, which we don't have on the Alienware. Okay, so now we've looked around these laptops, let's break them down and look at the internals. Okay, so let's compare the internals between these two laptops, and pretty much it's an easy win for the Alienware 18. Not only do we get faster RAM installed with 6400 megatransfers of RAM compared to the 5600 on the Razer Blade 18, but we also get 3 M.2 SSD slots, whereas the Blade 18 only gets 2. And one of the Alienware's M.2 slots is a Gen 5 populated with a blazing fast Gen 5 drive, whereas on the Razer Blade they're just Gen 4. Also, the Alienware gets 4 fans compared to the Blade 18's 3. Now both laptops have a vapor chamber cooler, but the Blade 18 gets a win here, making theirs easily accessible, whereas the Alienware 18 has an inverted motherboard, meaning that you need to take the entire laptop apart to actually repaste this actual heatsink. Now another advantage to the Blade 18 is that it has a socketed Wi-Fi card, though with both coming with Wi-Fi 7, I can't imagine you're going to be needing to upgrade it anytime soon. So let's put them back together and boot them back up to test the performance. And we're going to start with the CPU. Now both of these laptops use the new powerful Intel Core Ultra 9 275HX. And starting with the Geekbench 6 test, you can see that the Alienware has marginally better single core score, which is likely due to the faster RAM that's installed in this laptop. It has a much higher multi-core score though, thanks to a higher power budget. And moving over to the 10-minute torture test of Cinebench R23 also shows how much extra power that the Alienware has, as it gives it an almost 1,000 point lead over the Blade 18 in this benchmark. And as I compare each of the profiles in the Cinebench R24 benchmark, the Alienware has allowed much higher wattage in every profile, despite having similar fan noise as the Blade 18. Although that overdrive mode on the Alienware, which provides 100% fan noise, is ear-splitting. Now moving over to the GPU, and both these laptops have the NVIDIA RTX 5080 with 16GB of GDDR7. They both have advanced Optimus, a dedicated mux switch, and both have G-Sync capable panels. They both have a DisplayPort wired to the GPU, so you can connect G-Sync monitors or VR headsets. Now the 5080 in both of these laptops can run between 170 and 175 watts in their max profiles, but the Alienware does do it a few degrees cooler, usually sitting at just under 70. Now the Blade 18, although hotter, does stay quieter though in pretty much every one of the profiles than the Alienware when it's actually gaming, though the Alienware does get more power in their balanced and silent profiles than the Blade 18. Now if both these laptops had the same resolution, gaming would be almost identical on each of these machines in their max settings. But with the Alienware having a 1600p panel, it will be the better panel for a dedicated gaming machine, as 1600p is pretty much a great match for the 5080 or 5090 GPU. The 4K Plus of the Blade 18 is very difficult to drive at its native resolutions, meaning that you're going to need DLSS, FrameGen, or you're going to have to switch it to its other 1200p native mode. Now just before we finish the gaming section, I want to mention that I was impressed with both these laptops' cooling solutions and external temperatures whilst gaming. Now obviously Alienware wins here, being the larger laptop with large air exhaust, but the Blade 18 did much better than I expected, and both these laptops had cool palm rests and keyboards whilst long-term gaming sessions, meaning they're both very comfortable to game on. With regards to the software to control these laptops, the Alienware provides Command Center, whilst the Blade provides Synapse 4. Both are functional, provide profile switching, light adjustment and macro support. Both of these pieces of software provide an okay experience, and if I had to choose one over the other, my preference would be to the Synapse software. But it's also like asking me if I prefer Marmite or mayonnaise on my pizza. So right, let's talk about battery life, and I'm going to keep this section brief, like the runtimes of each of these laptops. The Razer took the lead here at 6 hours and 10 minutes against the Area-51's 4 hours and 50 minutes. Neither of these are anything to get excited about, but in light use, the Razer Blade was over an hour better. Another advantage for the Blade 18 was the performance on power delivery. Now both these laptops offer power delivery, meaning you can use them with a decent USB-C charger, dock, or PD monitor. But the Blade 18 was much better tuned in this mode. Now both were fine for desktop work, but the Alienware had terrible 3D performance whilst using PD, whereas I could actually game on the Blade 18 over power delivery. Now this is a big advantage as someone like myself who very often travels with the laptops and just a USB-C charger instead of those bulky PSUs that they ship with each of these laptops. Okay, there we go. There's our versus of the Razer Blade 18 versus the Alienware 18. These are two of the best so far 8-inch gaming laptops on the market. I do love them both, but they are very, very different. Alienware have really focused. They've given you all of the sort of high quality gaming equipment this year with the faster RAM, the faster SSD, the more gaming focused screen, and the incredible thermals in this laptop. So if you are a pure gamer, this may be the one to choose. Now Razer have gone for a bit of a different approach. They've been more conservative or stingy, depending on your opinions, on the actual components. 1TB SSD on a £3,500 laptop, and it's a Gen 4. 5,600 RAM when they could have used 6,400. That's a real shame. The screen though, that is better than I thought it was going to be. And if you're a content creator or somebody that works with a laptop and then wants to game as well, this could be a better choice. Thermals, easy win to the Alienware. It's not even an actual contest. The Razer Blade has done a lot better than previous year's Razer Blades for these sort of compact chassis. They've made it thicker than older Razer Blades this year, and it is much better than older Razer Blades. But it is not in the same league as the thermals or the fan noise on that Alienware 18. Dell have gone out swinging for the thermals this year. Usually when we've had an Alienware in previous years, they always hit 100 degrees and we're moaning that they're hitting 100 and they get loud. I don't know what they've done here. They have sprinkled some magic on this one. Thermally, it is amazing. Now obviously you don't buy an Alienware or a Razer Blade 18 for battery life, but the battery performance is slightly better on the Razer Blade. So again, if you're using this for work as well as play, they seem to focus it more for that. And so that might be an area that you might be wanting to look at this one. And price-wise, it's very difficult because it depends on your region, but the Alienware in the UK is slightly more expensive out of the gate, but then you get discounts to bring it back down. So price-wise, you're probably going to be picking up the actual Alienware cheaper than the Razer Blade. So in all honesty, this year, my personal opinion is I think for most people, especially gamers, the Alienware 18 is the one to buy. Only exception I would say is if you're working and using it for play, and then you might want to consider for that dual screen and the higher resolution and more compact size of the Razer Blade 18. And I also want to mention that another big feature that we get with the Alienware that you don't get with the actual Razer Blade is the warranty. The Alienware is backed by Dell and has 1 year's on-site warranty as standard that can easily be extended. That means if you have a problem with your laptop, Dell will send a technician to your house or office and fix your laptop and get you back up and running very quickly. So you're not having to send the laptop away, and you usually get it sorted ASAP. Razer Blade, we all know the horror stories. The Razer Blade support is not as good and you need to send your laptop back. That alone could make the actual purchasing decision for you. Depends on how much you place on that warranty. So there we go. I think it's quite an easy win if you're a gamer for the Alienware 18. The only exception I would say is if you're somebody that works and plays on their laptop, you might then want to consider the Razer Blade 18 for that more or extra portability and a higher res screen and slightly better battery life. That's my thoughts on these two laptops, but as always, I'd love to know what you guys think. Who's picking the Razer Blade? Who's picking the Alienware? Pop your comments down below and I will get back to you. And lastly, thanks for watching.